your story empower your life. Join me as I speak to many people around the globe and understand how the empowerment of their story led to the transformation of their life. My name is Rochelle Harlington, and this is the Transformational Soul Talks. Hi, and welcome to the Transformational Soul Talks. My name is Rochelle. Now, if you're joining us on YouTube or you're joining us on Spotify, I have a question for you. What is self-discovery? What about inner growth? Do any of these bring up feelings? And what about shadow work? That is something that a lot of us are beginning to do, we're beginning to look into, and it is really beginning to expand so many on the planet, because shadow work is something that expands us as we do the work. Now, my guest today, upon a journey of self-retrospect, was introduced to the world of Reiki at the end of 2017. She was more than slightly intrigued. However, she was reluctant to take the big plunge. She worked with her teacher on a few trainings. However, he wanted her to get back on track that was set before her, which was for her to own her spiritual strengths. Her personal mission as a Reiki Master, card reader, and clairvoyant was to help as many people as possible with the uniqueness she has to offer, allowing the natural, earthy vibrations to work through her for her greatest good. Guide you on your path to healing, both physically as well as mentally. She was blessed with these healing energies to restore the health of her patients and improve their lives through alternative treatments. Her ultimate goal is to heal, but also to teach her patients a better approach to their own health. This marked the beginning of this awesome journey that she was on. So I want to offer a warm welcome for Melody Larson. The energies are funny today. I'm just going to say that.
Hi there, Rochelle. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So I know you have a lot to share. And before we dive into the shadow work, I'd like to talk a little bit about your journey and how this all began for you. So I'll pass the mic back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So in 2017, I had reached out to a teacher who offered Reiki healing. At first, I wasn't totally convinced. As you said, I was a little weary. I got introduced to Reiki from taking a class. Things just naturally, once you go down the rabbit hole a little bit, it just kind of naturally transforms from there. So I was taking a class with like-minded people, was loving it, was introduced to Reiki, and I was like, okay, I'll reach out to this teacher. I got my Usui Reiki healing certification. I then went into Shambhala and Karuna Kai, which kind of helps me with heart, and it helps me to connect to the ancestors. Once my clairvoyance turned on, though, I wasn't ready for that. My teacher never quite warned of how much your clairs can turn on once you get introduced to all this energy. So I was like this buzzing beacon for all this crazy activity. And at one point in time, I was like, I know I'm the only one seeing this. So do I need to be committed or something? Like I was so like freaked out. And then it just kind of naturally went from there. I went from working with spirit while doing my Reiki to also then being introduced to tarot cards. I'd always done oracle cards, which are kind of a little more open to interpretation for myself or friends. I was told, hey, you need to pick up tarot. And I was like, there's 78 cards. There's a great big story behind it. I just don't know if I'm the person that can like retain all that. And then, so I was like, yeah, maybe, whatever. A week later, a friend of mine who teaches tarot was like, hey, I don't know why, but Spirit's been talking to me and you have to come do tarot. And I was like, okay, then I guess I pick up tarot. And then from tarot, that was great. And it's very spirit-led messages, which I really love because I'm able to offer, if I don't offer healing through my Reiki, I can offer healing through the card messages, which is absolutely gorgeous. And then that kind of led me into being like, well, with these messages I'm offering, I also need to get to know myself deeper. I need to get to know why I react or respond to certain things. So I started doing what's called the shadow work. And then from there, it took me into leading workshops because friends wanted me to help them on their spirit journey through the shadow work to kind of better themselves as well. And it's just kind of been like this whirlwind of one thing to the next.
Oh, wow. Now, for some of the guests that might be listening or viewing this video, maybe you could dive a little bit into what shadow work is, because some people may say, was that like, Peter Pan, the shadow behind you? So maybe you
Yeah,
could dive a little bit into that and give us an understanding.
yeah, I totally love that. So if you talk to psychologists, they'll say doing shadow work is working more in depth with yourself to get to know yourself. And they kind of leave it at that. And I feel like that's a really simplistic view. For
Mhm.
myself, what I look at shadow work is it's us looking at those traumas and the hurts, the skeletons that we keep in the closet that we pretend we can't hear the rattling all the time, rattle, 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 rattle behind us. And
Yes.
taking those skeletons out one by one and working with them and being like, I didn't like you. I didn't like what happened when you were around. I didn't like the circumstances of what happened while you were here, whatever that thing may be. But honoring that it's part of your journey, it's part of you, it's part of who made you who you are, made you more resilient, and made you be able to understand life better. It gave you bigger life lessons. Instead of sticking it back into the closet, offering it a cup of tea and then burying it because now you've worked with that thing and now you've faced it and you know how to, when you're going forward, to kind of not allow that thing to trigger you again or create so much anxiety in your life, kind of bringing you a sense of calm and relief and peace. And when others are facing something similar that you've gone through,
Mhm.
you're like, oh well, I've been through this before and I've worked with it and I've looked it in the face and I've made connection with that ugly truth. I can maybe do the same for you.
Wow. And a lot of us all have those skeletons in the closet. What would you
Absolutely.
say? Yeah. And I think for some whoever's listening, it's how we even react to certain things, would you say? Um, when someone says something to us, how we react to that. Would you consider that a type of shadow work?
Absolutely, because that kind of goes along with our triggers and our responses in everyday life. There are a lot of times, especially in today's day and age, a lot of us carry a lot of anxiety and a lot of things we kind of speak without thinking or we react without thinking about the consequences of those actions. And if we work with that shadow work, it's going to help us to be able to be like, oh, wait, no, I'm going to pivot in my response to this instead of just reacting out of instinct. And it helps us also hold our heads higher and not feel so small and mousy because we've done some of that great work.
Yeah. And I think that at least I feel, you can let me know how you feel, that that's starting to really spread, I guess would be the best word, is people are realizing that when they do that work, um, it does relieve some of the anxiety. They're able to start to move forward with their expansion. Would you say that shadow work is something that is very important in everyone's life, even if they say, well, I don't need that, I'm perfectly fine?
Oh, that's perfectly fine. Yes, I think it's important for everybody because everybody has different things in childhood, whether it be, you know, when we're adults, we can see things differently with our own children. But when we're children and adults respond to us in certain ways because they're in a panic or whatever, they're like, shut up and go to your room. And you get hurt from that. And you're like, but why? I was just trying to interact with you. We all have those little things, those little memories either from childhood trauma or some people have relationship traumas where they've been through things with their spouse or whatever, or haven't even forbid, somebody's been raped or something. We all have, that's what those skeletons are, is like the little things when we were a kid that like we didn't get the answers we were looking for because mom or dad were just reacting. And it helps us to then become better people
Mm,
when we're working with that and we're kind of breaking some of those generational curses and we're creating a space to be more caring and more empathetic and kind of trying to cut the great divide that's being put into our country right now.
mm. Ooh, that's a definite topic. In both, I mean, you're in the States, right? And I'm in Canada, but there is definitely a great divide. And if someone says, well, how would that look for me if I wanted to do that shadow work? What would you say to them?
I would say start simple, start with some meditations and some journaling. And that's one of the ways that I'm able to reflect on like self growth and stuff is by journaling. A lot of people aren't into journaling, and I get it. It's really hard to like sit there and be like, what am I going to write? And it doesn't always have to be like, Dear Diary, today I blah, blah, blah. It can just be bullet points. Somebody smiled at me at the drive through today. That made my day better. Or,
Hmm.
you know what? I saw a puppy walking down the road and I was having a tough day and that made my day better. Just little bullet points. But then that allows us a chance to go back and reflect and see how we have grown or where we have chance for growth. Like, oh, am I still the same person I was last year? Am I still reacting in the same way? Well, how can I change that? Maybe I need to go deeper. Maybe I haven't quite done that work.
I love that. And I remember a client that I worked with, I had actually asked her to write down her thoughts just for a week. And she came back to me, and I remember her saying, "Oh my God, my thoughts are so fucking negative." That was what she said
Yeah.
to me. And I was like, there you go. Because I explained to her that you have over 10,000 thoughts a day, and you can't possibly remember all of them. But
No,
you definitely need to be aware of what you're thinking. One of the biggest
absolutely.
things, that I talk about on the show is the empowerment, um, the empowerment of yourself, the story that you tell yourself, because that leads to the trajectory of your life. And whether you tell yourself a good feeling story, you tell yourself an empowering story is really up to you. And I think as a lot of people are starting to realize that it's time to really discover themselves and discover what they don't want to keep in their life anymore. Um, I think that work is so prevalent. It's so important, but I don't know if it's getting to the masses. I know there's a very large community of spiritual people out there supporting people, but do you feel that humanity as a whole is starting to understand that?
I want to say yes, but also no. I think the spiritual community is growing. We are gaining numbers. We are gaining more acceptance into the everyday norm instead of being looking like those crazy people. I often equate it to the gentleman who does the ancient alien show with the great big hair. Instead of people seeing the spiritual community like that guy, like, they're kind of seeing us as like, okay, maybe there's something more behind this. Maybe this is more legit. But I feel like there's so much more room for expansion as well, which is why I love things like this. I love doing the podcast. I love connecting with my community. I'm trying to work more with wellness places in my neighborhood or yoga studios or even being part of different craft fairs and I can offer a chat while we're there. Being able to offer that great expansion, that's part of our great work. Once we ourselves wake up when we start working with that shadow work and we figure out who we are at the core and we heal ourselves, then we can help to heal others. And then that can carry out and continue.
I love that. And I think that that's so important. Now, we all have family members, we all have people around us that are, our loved ones. How, when you made this transition, how did your family react to what you are doing now?
Um, that's an interesting question. So my family accepted me. They always have. They've always been very, very caring. That's not to say that they understand, though.
Mm.
That's not to say that they get this journey that I'm on. I'm kind of that crazy aunt or that crazy cousin. She's so fun to be around, but she's crazy. Um, I don't really go anywhere without my tarot and oracle cards. It's just kind of how I communicate with people. So I'm that person at holidays and I'm like, oh, you had this relationship? Well, here, let's talk to the cards. And they're like, um, so even in my own personal blood family, it's been some work, to get through. But I always look at family as the ones that we choose to surround ourselves with and not necessarily whose blood runs in our veins, even though we have that connection because we all have then our spirit ancestors and we want to make sure we keep that connection alive and well. It doesn't necessarily mean we all understand each other. We can still work together and be in the same room, though.
Hmm. Now, if someone was listening, I know you had said to start to journal, but maybe they are hearing and they're thinking, I don't do journaling. That's not my thing. My friends will think I'm weird. What would you say for them? Should they go get a reading, or would it be better to maybe sit with their thoughts? Like, what would you think?
So I say for those who don't like to journal, you can also take voice notes on your phone here or there. When you're in the car, you can be like, oh, I was at the drive-through today and, I heard this or this happened. Oh, okay, I'm on my way to work. Everybody doesn't have to know what you're doing. So I would say, okay, if you don't like to journal, take voice notes. If you don't like to do that, maybe typing on your computer. We're all on our computer at some point in the day anyway, or
Mhm.
taking notes in your phone. But I do recommend people going out, and if they're new to this journey and they're just kind of like, they're like, what is shadow work? What is a tarot reading? What is
Mhm.
journaling? I would say go out and connect with the members in your community who are already active in that. Go get a reading. Go do a Google search, see if you can find shadow journaling workshops around you. Get connected with your community, take classes, and go from there and see what works for you.
Love that. Yeah, because there is a lot of people, I think, right now that are in crisis that need support, and a lot of them are not sure in which direction. And our social media doesn't really guide them in the right direction either. It's all about drama and things that are not supporting them in growth and expansion. Now, you also touched a little, and I'm just going to shift gears here, about tarot reading and clairvoyancy. Now, explain a little bit about the clairs for anybody who's listening. I'm just going to throw it back to you because some people may say, well, what's clairvoyance? What's clairaudient? What is that? So maybe you could share that a little bit too.
So the clairs, there are, I think, like 5 or 7 clairs. I'm not privy to all of them, so I don't remember all of them offhand. But like, so clairaudience, for instance, would be like if you hear messages from spirit. Like a lot of times people sit and the wind's just going, and we're taught that wind is just wind, right?
Hmm.
Or is it? If
Mm,
you sit and you listen and you're one of those people that you're like, I swear I just heard blah, 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 you're probably right. Absolutely. Listening to when the birds are chirping, is there a certain way you're interpreting their chirping? Are you almost catching their conversation? You probably are. If you feel like that's true, then it absolutely is. A lot of times we're taught that that kind of stuff is crazy, but honestly, we're all mediums in some right. We can open ourselves up to mediumship, and that's what the clairs have to do with, is finding your sort of mediumship. For myself, it's clairvoyance. So what clairvoyance means for me is I get pictures in my head oftentimes while I'm working Reiki energy, because I'm opening myself up to the universe and that natural healing and the ancestors that are around us. So I'll see pictures like people or things, and I'm like, okay, this is coming through. This is coming through. If it resonates, great. If not, that's fine too. I don't hear the messages, but it's almost like I'm reading captions on a television that are coming across my screen as
oh,
I'm
that's
working. And that's how I'm able to relay the messages to people. There are many more. Some people can automatic write, so they close their eyes and they put on noise canceling headphones and they just write whatever's coming from spirit, whatever messages are popping in their head. So there's a lot of different ways to be able to communicate with spirit. We just need to be open to it.
interesting. I love the fact that you're talking about the images coming through. So share with us um, the strangest image that you've ever had while doing the Reiki, where you've got a very interesting image that came through that you weren't quite sure.
So it wasn't while I was doing Reiki, but it was when I was first attuned to the Reiki. I was
Mm,
sitting on my porch and my house was new to me then. I lived 3 houses up from a cemetery. It's a great, big, beautiful cemetery. But there was a thunder and lightning storm, and it said when water is running and there's all that electricity in the air, that spirit is able to come through better. So I'm sitting there and I'm sipping my tea and I'm enjoying the noises of the storm. And I see this army of people walking down the road. And that was the point where I
mm,
was like, okay, maybe I need to be committed. Maybe I'm officially crazy. Because I'm like, I know nobody else can see this. They were like true in form to me, but I could tell that they were translucent and I could see through them. So I was like, this is either a super figment of my imagination I need to
Mm.
be committed, or this is actually happening. Am I going to trust in myself to believe in this? And then from there, I ended up becoming a paranormal investigator as well.
Oh, wow. Yes, I think a big thing as well for people is paranormal, um, and understanding. Now, would you say, and I'm just going to switch gears again a little bit, but would you say that some of the shadow work is also connected to that as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because the more that we work with our shadow work, the more that we open ourselves to our ancestors. Because maybe some of the people that hurt us have passed on. Maybe some of the hurt that we hold on to is from a death that we haven't taken the time to mourn
Mm,
and really allow ourselves that space to feel and to cry and to be able to get over it. So once we do that, then we kind of naturally open ourselves up to allowing that energy within our auric field to be able to interpret the messages coming from the other side.
mm. Now, there's a lot out there that people will say, their houses are possessed, or the doors will open, or this will happen, and consistent stuff, or they'll wake up with, feeling like someone's standing over them. I've actually spoken to people that have gone through that. And, what would you say to them that are going through those type of things?
So unfortunately, I'm going to play devil's advocate in this one. A lot of people don't like my answer to it, but a lot of time that is poltergeist activity. What poltergeist activity is when you get a lot of people together in a house, and you were even saying when you talked to your client and you had her trace her thoughts for 2 weeks, she was like, wow, I'm so damn negative.
Hmm.
And that's the case if you have this person who's constantly negative and this person who's constantly negative, and it all jumbles together and it creates like this manifestation,
Okay.
which then kind of starts to act out because it becomes its own separate entity, but it's an entity made up from everybody's negative energies. So 9 times out of
Mm.
10, it's really just poltergeist energy because people aren't doing the work. They aren't facing their own demons. They aren't realizing, like, wow, everything I'm saying or I'm doing is like super negative. And that's why I try to tell people a lot of times it sounds corny, but thoughts are things and words are spells. Like you were saying before, watch your thoughts, watch how you talk to yourself. And I had a friend of mine actually really bring that to my attention. I have a tendency, I'm so caring and I'm so loving, but I'm my own worst critic. And she was like, wow, you're so rude to yourself. You would never speak to me the way you speak to yourself. Knock it off. And I was like, whoa, that was kind of like a great awakening for myself.
Hmm.
Be like, okay, I need to go deeper with my shadow work, obviously. Um, so I really think when people are having that kind of activity, it's
Hmm.
self-made. And I think once they start doing that shadow work and they start cleaning up their own thought process and everything and start really tracking what they're doing, who they are at the core, why these things are happening to them. Did it stem from mom used to always make me feel like I wasn't quite good enough no matter how hard I tried, or dad, or, I'm from the generation that parents used to use belts on their children. Does it come from that, the way that you react? And then how is that manifesting in your life today?
Yeah. I love that. And I think that's for anybody listening, that's so important is what are you thinking about? What are you talking about? Who are you bringing into your environment? And what kind of energy they bringing? And, I think back to, an incident probably about a year and a half ago. I had a friend go to a funeral, and I remember her coming back into the house, and my cat ran up the stairs, and then my dog started staring at her. And she goes, "Your dog's freaking me out." And I said, "Well, you've brought something with you because clearly
Yeah.
my dog can see it." And so I went through a little bit of a process with her and got her to say a couple of things and then sage the area and kind of just, and she goes, "Oh my God." And then I noticed that the dog stopped staring at her. So whatever was there left. Um, and I've also seen this with some very good friends who have said, they can see when they used to frequent bars and not so much restaurants, but clubs, they could actually see the entities sitting on the backs of people or sitting near them or being around them. And this is something that I think that you have explained very well is that when you get all that negative energy, right, because you get enough of it, it starts to, like you said, manifest and it seeks an expression and then it basically becomes matter. And so now you've got
Yeah.
this negative energy that is now following you around. I know that's pretty deep for some people to get, but you have to remember, and Dina, your good friend who referred you to me, said, we used to do this amazing audio room called Everything is Energy and Energy is Everything, because it doesn't matter whether you speak it, whether you say it, what you think it, you are creating it. And if you think about it enough, it seeks expression and becomes something physically. So that is, I love your explanation, and it makes sense to a lot of things. And I also am so glad that a lot of people can't see the 4D reality, because as some people can, could you imagine? I think people would
Oh,
lose their minds.
absolutely. I know. I always say that like that little manifestation, it's like a monkey on your back. You've put on like your monkey backpack, and you're
Yes.
carrying that around with you. But a lot of times that's why I tell like my daughter likes because our graveyard is huge and it's really, really safe for the kids. I always let them like go ride bikes or go for a walk in the cemetery, but I sage them before they even walk in the door because I'm like, you don't know if something attached itself to you, especially if while you were at the gates, you didn't specifically say, thank you for having me, but now you have to stay here. You can't follow me home. A lot of people don't know to do that.
Mm.
So if you don't do that, make sure you're cleansing with sage because you never know what could attach itself to you, especially depending on what your thought process is at that point in time. Like, did you block out your mind or did you keep your mind wide open? Are you thinking positive thoughts? Are you thinking negative thoughts? It's very, very empowering once you really start doing all the work.
Absolutely. And I know for myself and for anybody who's listening, every morning and every night I release all the energy that is not mine, and I take back all my energy that's been taken, and then I place like a little protective bubble around myself for the day, because you don't know who you're coming in contact with, and you don't know what entities or energies they have attached to them. And then it literally is like you suddenly, I know I've had this where people have gone, I feel so exhausted. I don't know why. And I'm angry, but I don't know why I feel these things. And so I'm like, when was the last time that you cleansed your energy? Oh, I don't know. I'm thinking, well, you've probably got a whole bunch of stuff that's just walking
Right.
around with you.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I think that can also, I mean, you can share your thoughts on that, but would you say that also that can also lead to even more feeling uncertain about what, self-discovery and understanding your shadow work can be, and then you just shut it down because you're not feeling good?
Absolutely, because as we go through our day, like you were saying, we collect all these little tidbits. Like maybe you didn't speak negatively of yourself, but maybe you were at work and your boss is like, oh, well, you turned in this paperwork, but this wasn't what I wanted. And you take that
Mm.
as a little bit of a slight. And then your coworker at lunch maybe sees you a little bit down. They're like, oh, look at who's glum. Like you need that extra, and then you take all that home and you're ingesting all of that. And if you're not like cleansing yourself, at the end of the day and being vigilant about protecting yourself and protecting your energy, then you're going to have all those little tidbits and it does become overwhelming and it becomes a lot, especially if you become like empathetic of others around you and you start carrying that energy that doesn't belong to you as well. Like maybe your coworker just like lost a pet or something, and you're taking that emotional feeling home with you. It's a lot to process and a lot of people are just like, nope, all done.
I love that. Wow, there's so many great little bits of information here, and I love that. Now, if someone wants to get in touch with you, if they want to connect with you, maybe do some sessions, they've got some shadow work that they need to address, where can they find you and on what platforms?
So I'm all over the place. I'm on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all under Melodies Reiki and Healing. I'm on YouTube as well. I do have a website. It's a little wonky though. It's a Wix website. So it's like welcome Wix/Melodies Reiki Healing. Or they could always contact me on my phone, area code 318-347-5431, and they can come up to my office when I have appointments available.
I love that. So as in closing, before we do, I always like to ask, is there any message that you would like to share with our listeners or viewers today?
Don't let anybody make you feel like you're crazy. Don't let anybody make you feel like you're less than. Always hold yourself with an air of empowerment. Know that you yourself are starseed. You are a part of deity. You are a part of the greater whole. Don't ever let anybody make you feel less than the whole. If you don't feel heard, if you don't feel seen, please go out into your community and connect with others who can make you feel empowered and make you feel the way that you deserve, because we all deserve to be walking around with our crowns on.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you very much for coming on today, sharing your beautiful wisdom. And like I said, so many little things that I were so intriguing, and it explains a lot about our world today. So thank you so much, Melody.
Thank you.